right, good evening, everybody. I'm going to call this meeting of January 2nd to order at 7:01. Can I please get a roll call?
Yes. Jack Sabia.
Hello.
Ed Woodworth.
Here.
Katie Newton.
Here.
Mark Sherwood.
Here, and happy birthday, Jack.
Kim McCormick.
Here.
Ray Woodworth.
Outside.
Melissa Kowalczyk.
Here.
And Paul King.
Here.
And Shauna.
She is excused.
Okay.
All right, if everyone can stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of minutes.
Madam Chair.
Oh, go ahead.
Point of order. Can we have a moment of silence for Tom Black? He was a para here at the high school and football coach for the Tornadoes. Great guy, and he'll be missed dearly.
Yep.
So, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so first is the regular meeting minutes from December. Yes, Bree.
Meeting minutes.
The 19th.
For the last meeting.
Uh-huh.
I just wanted to clarify about the Eagle Scout project,
Yes.
the dates, because they are not correct. And so Linda has located the correct one.
So that's already been vetted.
Yeah, it should be the year 2025. He's not gonna start one year and finish the year before.
He's good, but.
Good trick.
All right, so other than that, is there any other corrections? Or anyone's ready? Does someone want to make a motion on the amended minutes?
Make a motion to approve the amended minutes from December 19th.
Got a motion to have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Kim. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Opposed and abstain. 2 abstentions. Okay, and then I think we have a set of non-public, correct?
We do, yes.
I'll make a motion to accept the non-public minutes of December 19th.
Motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Second of Mr. Woodworth. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor? Opposed? And abstain. So 602. If you pass those back, please. All right, student rep.
Okay, so I know we had like a week and a half break for students and 2 days before of school for this, so a little slim pickings for updates, but I do have some.
It's okay.
So at the high school, next Thursday, the incoming freshmen will have their kind of introductory night at 6 p.m. And then before break, with the Student First Staff Faculty game for Mealy's Meals, as well as the Milkman Show, we were able to raise over $900 for the Mealy's Meals event for families in the holidays, which was pretty great. Really proud of that. For Atkinson Academy, on Friday, December 20th, students and staff participated in the annual holiday sing-along with a mix of songs like Jingle Bells and Feliz Navidad, which was pretty festive. So a special thanks to the Timberlane Music Department for their support in making this happen this year, with Nicole Bartlett, who is the elementary instrumental teacher, and Susan Howard and Robert Finch from both of the school supporting this event. The Atkinson Academy also has their winter concert featuring strings, band, and chorus, which will be held on January 22nd at 7 in the PAC for all to attend. At Danville, the Danville School Winter Concert will be held at the PAC on Wednesday, January 15th, starting at 7. So they look forward to showcasing the amazing abilities on stage as well for all to attend. At Sandown on Friday, December 20th, students and staff participated in their holiday sing-along also. So thank you to all the staff to continue this holiday tradition every year. At Sandown, Ski Club also starts tomorrow, so they have 29 students participating. And thank you to Chris Cairns and Melissa Sharp for their partnership with the Sandown School so that they're able to participate in this wonderful winter activity. And then at TLC Sandown Central, they are just looking forward to a great start to 2025. And then at the middle school, the 8th grade has been in a whirlwind of excitement over the past few weeks, filled with a lot of events and enriching experiences and opportunities. So after finishing their reading of A Christmas Carol, students visited the North Shore Music Theater to enjoy its unique theater and the round production of the musical itself. So later that week, they capped off the unit by hosting 8th grade families for a delightful Victorian tea as well, which was aptly named All Things Dickens. And the teachers and staff truly went above and beyond to make this happen for their students, and the parents were thrilled to hear firsthand about their children's learning and accomplishments. That is all I have today.
Thank you very much. Did you have a nice break?
Yes, I did. Very nice. Thank you so much.
Welcome. All right, do we have any delegates and individuals?
No, we don't.
Can I get a motion to move the 30 minutes of delegates individuals to the end of the meeting? So moved by Mark, do I have a second? Seconded by Jack. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed and abstained? I'm assuming you voted for.
I was for.
Okay, cool. Motion passes 8-0-0. It's all right, it's all right. All right, moving on to current business. First thing up, so last meeting, we made a motion and it passed to direct Mr. Krieger to find funds for full-day kindergarten for the FY 25-26. That was come to find that it was a procedural error on our part. It does violate the Articles of Agreement. This board has been very hard pressed to make sure that we follow every procedure, Articles of Agreement, and law and order, because if we can't do it ourselves, then how can we expect people below us to do that? So it was not done in ill intentions, but only with the best intentions. Ms. McCormick, would you like to say anything?
Yeah, that was my motion that I made, and to the board, I apologize for the misunderstanding. It was never my intention to go against the Articles of Agreement. It was my intention to enrich a practice that we have had for 17 years, which was kindergarten, half-day kindergarten, and tuitioned in full-day kindergarten, which is completely, it'll be a topic for another minute, but yes, I did want to rescind my motion and every motion that had to do with funding full-day kindergarten, and then open it up for discussion when you're ready.
Okay, so you're motioning to move to rescind the motion that the school board adopted at the December 19th meeting regarding full-day tuition-free kindergarten.
Correct. That's so moved.
Okay, motion by Kim, seconded by Mark. Any other discussion at this time? Yeah, Jack.
So I just want to say that, contrary to popular belief, what Mark thinks, I'm kind of been around the block here a little bit longer than everybody else. And my gut instinct told me that should have probably gone on a warrant, but I was remiss in not remembering that it had already been on a warrant. So it really falls on my shoulders for not being able to articulate that to the rest of the board. In addition to that, we've taken some, I think, undue shots due to the fact that if the worst we do is care enough about children and giving them every advantage, quite frankly, I was against full-day kindergarten before that conversation and that presentation started. I changed my mind based on a couple things. One, the numbers kind of made sense to me. Two, being a child that had a learning problem and suffered with it for quite a while because no one was able to identify it. Three, the potential savings to the district long-term, trying to get out of this spiral of special needs and funding special needs long-term. So again, I think it was all done with the best of intentions. Kim, you're one of the most compassionate, caring people that I know. And it was the reason why, and your passion, that made me kind of just lean towards doing what we did that night. I'd like to see this in a warrant, and let's see if the people that say they support full-day kindergarten step up and what they have to say about it. I would love to see that. I'd love to see this board put it on a warrant. My guess is I would know the outcome, but it is short cash and in the scheme of things. And it's all relative, I guess. So again, I think I bear the burden and the responsibility of not giving you guys the history of that. In addition to that, I would ask people, when we say, well, what's a year? What's a year in a young kids? We all know that how important it is what kids get before the third grade. But I had a very nice group of people ask me, Jack, where was the evidence in this? Why did you guys do this? And I thought about it. I woke up one night and I said, you know what? the pandemic. Look at the impact on our students for a year of lost learning. Do you need any more evidence than that, how impactful a single year is, regardless of what grade they're in? So, and then another thing that was brought up during the week was, well, there's plenty of money out there and people can afford $400 a month. In the same breath, we're saying they don't have enough money and everyone is struggling today. So there seems to be a contradiction there. And I remember, maybe you guys don't, but I remember what it was like having little kids, starting out, having a mortgage, and trying to make ends meet as a young family. Not everyone's rolling around in $400 a month. So there were a whole host of reasons why I thought it was a good idea. My bad. So if someone wants to make a motion to put that on a warrant, I'd be more than happy to support
Should we finish this first and then open the discussion further?
We
Would that be
should.
okay?
it. Sorry.
No, I appreciate what you said, Jack. I truly do.
Mhm. Yes, and though intentions were good and emotions, though passionate, unfortunately, it cannot supersede what the voters in the article of agreement state, which I believe that's what everybody understands at this point. So motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed and abstained. All right, so rescinded. But that does open up, since we're on this topic, for other things of, do we want to go and put this for a warrant article for this year?
And I'm going to say what I said at our last meeting. You have families in our district that can afford $450 a month for their students to have a full day of kindergarten. The ad hoc committee we spoke to almost every kindergarten teacher in the district, first grade teachers, special educators, that told us that the kids that had full day kindergarten came to first grade more prepared than the kids who didn't, than the kids who either didn't go or went to half day. That's not the rule, but that was what they saw most of. So for me, if it's me and I can't afford $450 a month, but I want my child to have every advantage in the world, that seems so unfair that this district won't change things so that my kid can have what every other kid who has money can have. Did I say that right? It's a little bit. So I do want I want to write a warrant. I would love to write a warrant article with the board support or with the board. I just wanted to open it up to see if everyone is willing to do that. And if we could spend the time trying to write a warrant article so that we can include kindergarten in our articles of agreement with the money that we identified that we'll need to start it for next year, which was the $150,000. And then get it passed for next year and get all these kids on a level playing field next year.
Paul?
Apologies, I was trying to watch it on the plane
Nope,
2
you're
weeks
fine.
ago, but, so the 150,000 was, teacher and a half of equivalent, right?
Is that correct?
It was an addition, Paul, of 1.0 FTE.
Okay, and then the way I read the Department of Education site is that we will get, if you have full-time kindergarten next year, it'll be 4128 adequacy aid per student, including kindergarten. So, or 4182, one of those.
It was
Somewhere
over
in there.
4,000.
Yeah, between 41 and 4,200. And we're giving up the 4,500 in tuition. What do we do with families that need full-time but can't pay it right now? We just tell them no, they can go to half?
Correct.
It doesn't seem like the model that we want, but I just.
It's the
so I
model
did a
that we have.
Yeah. I think we're trending away from that, and you see it with I think there's 104 districts that said yes and 4 remaining that are no at the moment. So I figured there's a lot of people smarter than me that decided this was necessary. Heck, we had kindergarten when I was, I mean, that was 47 years ago. I mean, that was free kindergarten. I was in Massachusetts, but just in all the research I did after watching that, becoming interested, and then I saw the email about what we're gonna discuss tonight as this motion that just went through. I just think that's short money that you gain back I don't even know how many times, not even just in hard money, and just increased performance of students, students that don't have to repeat grades in the first, second, third, and fourth grade. I don't know how often that happens, but if they start with that head start, they're, from the data I could see, I was mostly focusing on Bill de Blasio's large-scale project in New York. And just the data that came out of that from the full-time kindergarten, it was amazing. Not to mention the property values and the economic activity that came because of it. I know we're talking about crafting a motion, because we want to do it right. We want it to be,
Right.
in agreement with the articles and any RSAs or anything like that. But it also has to be, we need that message out there, because this is, if you're telling me we're giving up $4,500, but we're getting $4,182 from the state plus anything else, whether it's special ed or reduced price meals or anything like that. This is easily free over the long term.
Over time.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, this pays back.
Of course, a year or two, perhaps, you know.
Oh, yeah.
As soon as you start having students that won't have to receive services that cost us, personnel to hire and things like that.
Yeah,
You're making it back immediately.
yeah, plus pay gaps that you might not experience if we have reliable, professional, caring, I know it's school, it's kindergarten, but we also have that place for a child to go where parents don't have to make a decision between a more intense job or a more involved job and can do both and take care of their family. I mean, there's just so much in the community that this benefits.
It has a ripple effect.
It just seems like a no-brainer to me. And for now, that's it. But I just want people to hear what I thought. I did put some thought into it. I did some research, going in pretty, I didn't really have a horse in that race at all, but it's, once I was done, no-brainer to me.
Before I let Dawn and Kim go, I just want everyone here to know that we don't have to figure out language tonight. All a motion has to do is just to do a warrant article. So we don't have to get like in the weeds tonight about what that language is or whatever. All that would have to do would be a motion for a warrant. That would be it. I'm gonna let Dawn and then Kim.
Thank you. I first of all, I say that's almost a very succinct summary of the conversation we had last meeting. And the only thing I would add is that the emotional piece for a family that would prefer to go full-time that can't, and the process of watching that impact their kid, it to me is the compelling piece here. You want to be fair to all kids, and we're not currently structured in a way that is fair for all kids, and that's not our intent. It's never been anybody's intent, but it's the reality. It's time, I think, that we face that reality. Try not to be stubborn about past practice and what kids might have had in the past, and my kid was okay, or whatever is driving the emotion that would be possibly against doing this. I just think as a district, we need to take some pride in, our fairness, our focus, and just being able to support the needs of our community, not just the kids, but the parents who are worried about those kids.
We were talking about, Paul brought up funding for full day kindergarten. So right now, from what I understand, and Justin, correct me if I'm wrong, we receive $1,900 per student for anyone enrolled in kindergarten. But if we move out of a tuition-based kindergarten, we will receive half of what the adequacy aid is, which is $4,900. Is that right? $4,100. And then the state will give us the other half by way of a grant. Correct.
That's correct.
Okay.
And I would caution that let's speak in terms of percentages here and not exact dollar figures, because I don't have them in front of me,
Yes.
Kim. Right now, correct, we receive half of the adequacy-based payment for every student enrolled in kindergarten. If we move to full-time, we would continue to receive that half payment, and it would be supplemented with a non-competitive grant that would make up the other 50% of the adequacy payment, bringing that full-time kindergarten student whole to the 100% adequacy payment given by the state of New Hampshire.
So that student, that kindergarten student would be receiving the same amount of money as a 8th grader, 10th grader, and down the line.
I believe that's, yes, I think it's a K to 12 payment.
Okay.
That's what I read.
Bree?
So just to paraphrase that, we are actually losing money from state funding because, or adequacy aid, because we do not have a full day kindergarten?
We're not receiving everything that we could, so I think it's at 2132 right now is half. So we're leaving 2132 on the table.
Mhm.
But, and we've heard a number of impassioned people come and speak to us about their tax bills and how much of a squeeze it is. We feel that we pay the taxes as well. In some ways, this is one of the few things we can do where we spend pennies and get dimes back, right? So the families that are hurting most will disproportionately derive the greatest benefit from this, not just in flexibility for them able to go to work, but they, by and large, those who are struggling most would be unable to give their child the advantage that the neighborhood kids get. So even if it were not the right thing to do, and it is, financially, it's a smart thing to do.
Jack?
When's the last day warrants gonna be submitted?
19.
The 14th of January is the deadline the board is working on in terms of if you moving toward generating a warrant article.
And the second question is, I've heard a lot about lost revenue. What would that be? And I think it's important in this economic environment to understand by town, if we could do it like we just had a lot of, and one of the problems is some of this stuff is complex accounting from what you guys just said. It would be nice to be able to articulate or quantify the actual impact, say on a $500,000 house in Sandown, and so everyone understands exactly what, you know, in Danville, in Atkinson. So everyone understands exactly what the impact of this is over time. I mean, you may have to do a little stretch out 4 or 5 years, you know, potentially with potential savings in special ed. But I think sometimes people hear a number and just think, oh my God. But it doesn't sound like the number per household is going to be what I have heard suggested, and it would be nice to quantify that in a definitive way.
And Jack, we'll be able to do just that, and we're required to now to put the impact, the tax impact for each warrant article that's presented to the public. So if there is a kindergarten warrant article, it will have a tax impact
Per town?
Not per town, no.
It would, and I know we can do that because I've done it. I think it's important to understand because what Danville pays is very different than what Atkinson pays on the dollar, right? And sometimes that even gets a little bit convoluted because the total amounts per town are inverted to the rates, if I have that right, and I'm sure I do.
Kim?
It sort of brings me to the Articles of Agreement.
Yep.
That were written in the 1960s and may or may not be, they may or may not speak to where we are as a district right now. So when and if, but the when, we write the warrant article, if it's agreed upon, I don't know if we have to vote on that or.
We just need to make a motion in a second and then we will.
Okay. I really do think that as a board, we should be reviewing the Articles of Agreement on a regular basis, just to see where they are and where, you know, does it still fit the needs of our Timberlane community? That was my little tiny bit after the fact.
Bree?
So reviewing great, but we can't change any of them without a warrant
Correct.
article.
Correct.
Okay.
That's
So
correct.
it'd be reviewing, and then if we're like,
And
ugh,
then
maybe,
putting something
then yes.
forward
Right.
to the
And then
public.
do the people. Yes, Alyssa?
I just have a quick question for either Kim or Mark, since you guys are on the committee. If we did the warrant and it went through for the tuition-free full-day kindergarten, would there still be a half-day option, or would that half-day option go away?
That's
we
a good
know?
question. And
The way we had done the math was for full day, we had not specifically looked at the half day as well.
Like, I didn't know, like, with the town, with the public meetings and
When
comments.
that committee got formed, the sole intention was to figure out about fully funded full-day kindergarten.
I just didn't know if you had heard from the residents and everybody that you had spoken
They
through the
wanted full.
meetings,
They
if
wanted full.
anyone had voiced their concerns, like, you know, yes, you know, full day would be nice for, you know, these people, but I personally would want half day. I didn't know if you had encountered
we
that
didn't
at all.
encounter anyone
Okay.
who wanted half day.
Okay.
In fact, I think when we looked at the other towns or the other districts in the state,
Yeah, they all pretty much, once they had those that
The
we
full
looked
day
at that
got-
had
half day went
day,
away?
when they got full day, half day went away.
Okay.
And you know what, we'll probably get one or two parents who would prefer that, but financially setting up a whole separate tier for that may not make sense.
Okay.
And the benefits, and a lot of the benefits we looked at, there wasn't no kindergarten to kindergarten, it was half day to full day.
Yeah.
And I mean, there was a breadth of difference between the kids' experience and their ability to succeed further on, just between half and full. And that was kind of our charge, and that's what we did focus on.
I know anecdotally, I have like heard from one person that they're just not ready to let their baby go yet.
Correct, and same
and they
here.
liked the half
I was
day.
thinking about a
But
certain
again, I think
person.
it's
Yeah.
just a mindset, like I'm not ready for them to go to kindergarten, or I'm not ready for them to go to half day, like it's
Like a
just
full
a
day.
shift.
Yeah.
You know, I'll get a source, I'll pass on to you guys. In that research, I did see that families would have the option to pick up their kids at half day. It wasn't mandatory that they go. But I don't know what the adequacy would look like, and I don't remember the source on that, but I'll find it. I was mostly in the New Hampshire Department of Education and some other places, but I'll figure out what during my notes at home.
I think like all other matters, we would want to engage with those families individually and work through an individualized process as those needs come up.
But even like the state that I'm from, like full day kindergarten, like you did it, you didn't have an option anymore, you just went.
That was your parents.
Yes, yes, turned out fine, okay. All right, so, anybody wanna make a motion to develop a warrant article for fully funded kindergarten for FY 25-26?
so moved.
All right, could I have a second?
Second.
Second by Dawn. Any other discussion? Bree?
I am super for this, but just because it directly impacts me, I will be abstaining.
Sounds good. Any other discussion? All right,
Yeah, I'll just say, it impacts me as well, and it could actually be a financial disadvantage for my family if this came through, but I am still going to actively vote in support for it because it's right, though it may have a negative impact on my household, it's the right thing to do, and so I will not be abstaining.
Jeez.
all right. All right, any other discussion? All right, all those in favor? Opposed and abstained, 701. All right,
Just moving forward, I'd be happy to work with the board regarding the language of the warrant, just so we can make sure that it's going through a legal channel and it's checking all the boxes. So we're making sure that we are staying up to the process that you guys talked through, that you wanted to be cognizant of moving forward.
Please.
Thank you.
all right. Moving on, phase 3 of the lease.
Phase 3 of the lease, I'd be happy to bring forward to you the determination from the subcommittee of the board for facilities. We're on page, I think, 17 of your packet. There's a fairly simple grid. The Facilities Committee has been meeting since the summertime, working through the entire master project list, and they have whittled their way down to 7 projects they would like to push forward into phase 3. 6 of them will take place at Atkinson Academy and are really dealing with foundational units over there in terms of HVAC. And the other major location would be at Sandown North. A couple of things to share. It was advantageous for the committee to keep these projects in 2 locations in terms of the fiscal cost. In the end of it, you'll also notice that there's a rebate coming from phase 2 that'd be applied to phase 3. And that's meaningful because the committee also wanted to push forward the next phase of the lease that is in a smaller dollar figure than phase 2 to continue to give the board the opportunity to possibly talk about prepayment of that lease as time moves on in terms of saving the taxpayers money over the long run. So myself, I think other members of the subcommittee could answer any questions you have specific to these projects. But we're looking for approval of the project list so we can start going out and drafting RFPs for these pieces.
Bree.
So I see a lot of these are Atkinson Academy, and I know that the CIP approved the Belfry work. Now,
Correct.
a lot of that I assume would be working together in
Correct.
conjunction, and that also cuts down cost because while we're kind of removing to repair this can go in, and as we coordinate that, so it kind of maybe makes sense to have all these together.
Yeah, I think if you think about like in the CIPs, the Belfry, and in here, it's mostly HVAC and roofing type of things. And yeah, if you got crews over there, that makes sense to have them happening at the same location.
Jack?
I'd just like to say, in the wind in the air, is that, you know, we're finding a hard time finding projects, because if the project isn't prepared to go on RFP, doesn't mean the work doesn't need to be done. So there are a whole host of projects that I believe are crucial to the district in lieu of building a new high school, middle school, that need to be accomplished before we move on. So we've kind of addressed almost in its totality a certain aspect of our infrastructure. And then I think, you know, moving forward, some of the things that I've articulated over time, I think that are very important and crucial, like leaking walls, still need to be done. So I don't want anyone to misconstrue the dollar amount on a phase maybe going down, as there is still work to be done. I think that's important for people to understand that.
It was just what was prioritized for this go around.
Yeah, you doing.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Just on top of the almost $1 million for the Belfry. All of this money on phase 3 is except for
$332,000.
is going to Atkinson Academy.
Hold on, Kim, was there anything else with it?
Well, I'm sorry, that was more of a statement than a question. I think my question is, and I get what Bree was saying, like the work is being done there, so it kind of makes sense if we're gonna do it there, and everywhere needs work done, right? So, we're on the roof, we might as well do the roof and all that kind of stuff. Is there nothing else we could have taken out of here to move to a different school? And I'm saying this respectfully because I know the work has been put into this with the CIP. So I'm asking actually and being respectful with my question.
Mark and then Jack.
My understanding, so yes, we certainly could have crossed some stuff off and spread it out more, but it would not have been as cost efficient. And once you're changing HVAC controls, once you're changing units out, would you just change the unit out and the HVAC controls and come back 2 years later and then do the duct work? No, you want to do it all at once. I mean, it's once your car's up in the lift and you're changing your tires, might as well do the oil as well. It's more cost effective, even though you have another car in the garage that will need work later on.
The
So
entire phase 3.
so it pretty much is, and that shown out to me as well. But I'm looking at this as what is best for Timberlane, what is best for Timberlane taxpayers, not just the residents of one particular town. And though, you know, there's only a little bit going to Sandown North, as a member of a district, they're all my kids, and it did make financial sense to do it this way rather than to piecemeal it.
Jack.
Unfortunately.
So Mark and I kind of had this conversation during the facilities committee where he kind of articulated the same thing. And I was like, we can not look at our assets as Sandown assets, Atkinson assets. We have to look at them as district assets and prioritize those things in the way that they need to be done. In addition to that, I look at the Belfry and you're right, almost $1 million, but it's because we never did what we were supposed to do. And then we paid the juice on top of it, the interest on top of it, because we never kept up with the work, right? That should have been painting 1 year, a little bit of this, that year, but for decades, no one touched the Belfry. Now it's $1 million. I hope we learn a lesson from this moving forward, keeping up with our assets and doing things, chipping away at it a little bit at a time to lessen the impact to the taxpayers, because this didn't have to be this way. So it bothers me to spend money on controls, on HVAC. They're almost $1 million a building. So I reached out to people much more knowledgeable than me and said, is it really this? And the reality is there's only a couple companies that offer controls. The time to do it is when you're putting in the systems. There's really no other time to do it because we've spent a lot of money on this. I think that I, as a layperson, when it comes to HVAC, didn't fully understand, but in that facilities meeting, we understood that when the fires were down in Massachusetts, they were able to shut off in Plastow and at the high school and middle school, able to recirculate, if I have that right.
Yes.
Dr. Martin, the air, so it wasn't sucking all the smoke into the building. That's one example. Our kids having to shut down the class because it's too cold in that class. It is a painful exercise, but it's gonna be behind us sooner than later. But the Belfry, we kind of had to do. It was part of the Articles of Agreement, and we've been neglecting that for so long. So, you know, I mean, when the boilers went up in Sandown, I'm not gonna say, well, geez, you know, that wall needs to be painted in Atkinson, so we're not gonna do the we cannot, we've gotta look at it as as one asset, and we're all united on this and just prioritizing that work that needs to be done. The chips fall where they fall, so.
So to kind of summarize, to Tim's point though, is that while it is all of Timberlane, but other people are gonna look at this and be like, oh, why is Atkinson getting all this? And it's not because we were like, oh, go for Atkinson. You all have a list of stuff that needs to be done. You looked at it and said, this is what needs to be prioritized first.
One other point, there's a $500,000 worth of roofing being done in Danville off the CIP. So that's scheduled to be done. I mean, there's the lease, then there's the CIP work that needs to, that is going to get done. And that's a little bit more spread out, but $500,000 worth of new roofing in Danville.
Don?
Again, to one of the points that Jack made, is that over time, we put ourselves in a no-win situation. So you have to have at least a strategy that's gonna not cost you more money by doing it piecemeal. And that's what this represents to me.
Doing it the right way, all at once. Great.
And if I remember correctly, phase 1 and 2 had significant high school, middle school.
Correct.
Attributes to it. So again, we are kind of circulating around to the need and where and fiscally responsible of when we're there, when the crane is already there, let's not have to bring it in again. Makes sense to me.
Did that answer your questions, Kim?
Thank you.
Right.
Justin, did you sound like you were gonna say something and then
I was like, I'm good. All right, any other questions on the list? All right, so we do need to approve this list. Does someone want to make a motion?
So moved.
So you make a motion to accept the phase 3 project list?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Alyssa. Coming in strong, beat you down. All right, any other discussion?
Just a question.
Yes, Bree.
Are we infinite phases or is 3 like the last one? Or do we just keep going?
If 3 goes through as it sits here, that would put the district at around $15 million total access towards the 25 million. But it's this group's decision about how large or small. So we could have an infinite number of phases if we're really tiny,
Yeah.
or one more phase after this. It's kind of up to the discretion of the board.
Right, because our lease is up for 25 million, so we've already done 15 million. So it's, once we hit that we've tallied up to 25 million, we're done. Because that's what the voters voted on.
Correct.
Okay, so it's not like we pay it off and then, oh, now we've got more
I just
access to
remember
more
always
money.
It's not a credit card.
was
Correct.
talked about,
Okay,
that's
yeah,
why
yeah.
I just was
Okay.
clarifying.
Good question, I'm glad you asked it.
That's good. All right, so motion's been made and seconded. Any other discussion, questions? All right, all those in favor? Opposed and abstained. All right, 800. Right, next is the FY 26 proposed budget.
So I can start there for the board tonight. This is just information for you tonight. This is currently where the proposed budget sits at. There are 2 anomalies that I'm going to point out to you and then give you the direction of the budget committee meeting based on their meeting on December 26th. So the proposed budget you have in front of you is going to change. There are 2 adjustments that I anticipate BudCom making to that. The first adjustment will be a renegotiated transportation contract that we most recently did with First Student over this holiday break to be more reflective of the services that they're providing us as a district. So big picture, that is going to reduce our transportation liability for fiscal year 26 by about $100,000. So you will see a reduction there. There was also a motion at a previous budget committee meeting that was not reflected in the number that they voted on the 26th that included the school board, the removal of the school board stipends. So the budget committee is also going to revisit that. They have scheduled a special meeting that will take place next Thursday on January 9th. And those are the two items of the proposed budget that they are going to reopen for discussion. And again, I anticipate them moving forward with votes in the affirmative for both of them. Other than that, you've got what the administration has put forward to the budget committee, which still represents a -% decrease over the previous fiscal year. And then you've got the entire lines of those budgets there outspelled for you.
Okay.
I'd be happy to answer any questions, whether it's about this budget or the process of BudCom as well, because they're kind of intricately tied together.
Just like to make one statement here. If you all remember, 8, 10, 12 months ago, when we charged Justin to look at department by department by department. For those in the general public may not be aware of the discussions going on and the research he and Sandy did in tracking the actual transportation needs, going through the contract that we had, and realizing that perhaps the services promised were not the services rendered and or billed for. I'm speaking rather ugly here, but they went through and through a process that was not painless, went through and found this. So for those who are, it's not always pleasant seeing how the sausage is made, but there was a lot of work in the background here that allowed them to renegotiate and have this discussion and save us $100,000. So there, I just wanted to get, tip my cap where appropriate. Thank you guys for doing the work that you did.
So again, yes, the budget committee will have a meeting on the 9th to reduce the budget by those two amounts. And then we'll have the complete budget before us. And again, it is a reduction from what last year's budget was. Any other questions? All right, moving on. All right, we got some ratification of some two CBAs, is that
We
correct?
do. I think Fran is going to come up and maybe lead us through with some of the board members who may have sat on negotiations with her.
Hi, Fran. Good, how are you?
I don't know if you guys have any questions. We do have two contracts to ratify. One is with the cafeteria workers for 3 years.
Okay.
The other one is for the custodians as well for 3 years. These are both Teamster unions. I do know that we have the warrant amounts for both of them. So for the custodians, the total amount over 3 years would be $278,689. And for the cafeteria, again, there's only 4 people in the cafeteria, which is why it's a little, I should say lower. For 3 years, it'd be $17,022. Those are the total amounts for the 3 years for both agreements.
Would you repeat the first one again? That
Sure.
was
$278,689.
And both of those are for 3 years, correct?
Yes.
Before Bree, does anybody who was on those negotiations want to say anything or give any more information?
It was quite a process. Thank you for your support with all this, Fran. It was not easy. There was, especially with custodians, some flexibility that historically had not been there. And so there was, I think, goodwill on both sides for the most part, but there was some give and take, and we were happy to eventually reach an agreement.
I think the one positive thing is we have had difficulty attracting and retaining custodians. Starting pay was $17 an hour. We have increased the starting pay to $20 an hour, and then I think $24 for our lead custodians. So I do hope that will help us to attract people. Right now, we're using overtime to cover a lot of the vacancies we have, which again is expensive and it's also wearing down our staff. So we're hoping with this we'll be able to attract some people going forward.
Bree?
Just point of clarification, so on this warrant article for the ratification, it will have the effect on the district.
Correct.
Yeah, you'll see when we get to the warrants today that those dollar figures for that first year of both agreements are now populated in those warrants.
Anybody have any other questions? I'm glad that we were able to come to some agreements.
It's a long time coming, but we did it.
And thank you for the 2 board members that stepped up to be on those 2. I know time is precious to everybody, but
Precious.
thank you.
We did a good job.
All right, so we need to make 2 separate motions on these. So does someone want to motion to accept the tentative agreement between the Timberlane Regional School Board and Timberlane Custodians Union?
So moved.
Motion by Kim, do I have a second? Seconded by Mark. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed and abstained. All right, 701. All right, then does someone want a motion to accept the tentative agreement between the Timberlane Regional School Board and the Timberlane Cafeteria Workers Union?
So moved.
So moved by Kim. Do you have a second? Seconded by Don. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor? Opposed and abstain. 701. All right. Thank you very much, Fran. All right, calendar.
So
Good evening. Good evening.
you have in your board packet two optional calendars for your consideration for the 2025-2026 school year. Just to give you some context and remind you, there is a state RSA. House Bill 1661 was passed, I want to say 3 years ago now, that requires regional CTE centers sending schools to align their school calendars to minimize conflicts of school days with the districts that house the CTE centers. So for us, we send our students to both Pinkerton and the Salem School District. So for the past 3 years, we've set up a time for all of the regional districts, which include Timberlane, again, Pinkerton, Salem, Windham, and Pelham. There are representatives from those districts. We met back in October to look at the projected dates for holidays, for school vacation weeks, and also to align things like professional development days and early release days. And so what you see in front of you, these two options for the two calendars, all of those days are consistent regardless of the option that you should go with.
Okay.
And the professional development days and early release days that are on here reflect the agreements that we made with those other districts with regard to when those PD days and early release days will happen. And so essentially it is, we are required to minimize those conflicts to have fewer than 10 over the course of the school year. That count does not begin until after Labor Day. So regardless of whether you should adopt the calendar that begins before Labor Day, which would be it's 2 days prior to Labor Day, that would be a Wednesday and Thursday of the week before Labor Day, with Friday being a day off, or the version that's after Labor Day that would begin with a 4-day week on the very next day, Tuesday through Friday. Those days will not impact before Labor Day that count of 10. And just a couple of things to draw your attention to on this calendar. Also, really, it's a difference of 2 days on the tail end, because we're really just looking to, if we did before Labor Day, it would be again just 2 days in that week. You can see the difference in when we would begin our new teacher induction program. The first contractual day with new teachers would be pushed back essentially a week for those teachers. But with regard to students, they would start, again, just those 2 days of that week prior to Labor Day. From professional development, you can look at when those would happen. So in essence, those would happen the week prior to Labor Day, but it would either be earlier in the week or later in the week for staff. And then on the tail end, just wanted to draw your attention to the last days of school on both options. So on the option before Labor Day, we're looking at the 180th day of school, which is, again, the state requirement for if we are counting days. That day would be June 16th, which would be a Tuesday. We'd be looking at the 18th if we started after Labor Day, a difference of 2 days. Also in the state law connected to calendars, there is a requirement that seniors cannot have their school year reduced by more than 5 calendar days or 30 instructional hours, whichever is less, from all students across the district. So regardless of the option that you should consider, if you count backward, we would still be looking at Saturday the 13th as a potential tentative graduation date, barring any unforeseen weather-related events, right, excessive cancellations, things of that nature. But the calendar adoption likely would not affect the projected date of graduation for those seniors next year. Just also letting you know, we did consult with representatives from the Teachers Association, from the TTA, to consult with them, and they shared their preference would be the calendar that starts prior to Labor Day. So I did want to share that with you.
Why? Did they say why?
Yes, I think for many of our staff, things such as sports, music, band camp, right, those types of things start at a typical time based on statewide schedules, not necessarily the band camp. But with regard to athletics, those start dates remain consistent across the state regardless of whether or not we start before or after. So they felt that many of our coaches who are staff are already here. And so they felt that it was advantageous to start earlier. So that was, and I know Mr. Broad is here. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add to that, but.
They had
Yeah, come on up.
those who teach AP thought
Yes,
a slight,
that's right.
slight advantage of starting earlier. And we thought that it was towards the end less restrictive. If we have to pile on snow days, that leaves a little bit more of a margin to it.
Kind of what you said about CT, I know that part kind of stands out. I'm a CT student myself. I go to Salem for their TV and media production courses every morning. So kind of what you said with like aligning that schedule, I think it'd be very beneficial. I think it allows, kind of like Ms. Rodney learned your fullest potential, you take into account the snow days. And just like the consistency within the districts, I really think just like benefits their learning and kind of gives more of a complete opportunity and like experience and exposure. I know there's a lot of like, internships that come along with CT, and I feel like having that consistent schedule really helps you feel aligned with both schools. So I think it could be very beneficial to that.
So you're stating you're advocating the one before Labor Day?
Yes.
Mark and then Jack.
So answered the question, raised another question. Before or after, I thought that they were going to be in line with CPT regardless.
They are.
So the PD days, early
Yep.
release days are aligned. Right now, I actually checked this afternoon, all of the other districts, their websites to see what they had officially adopted. I don't believe any of the other 4 districts have officially adopted their calendars yet for next year. Conversationally, and again, it's been a couple of months since we met, the majority of those districts were starting before Labor Day, but there was one that was considering after.
Okay, thank you.
So.
Jack, did you have something?
Yeah, would you like to come sit down here? No, not you, Sam. You can come down here and sit in, because you articulated that pretty good.
Sure.
You're the best.
You wanted to tell you pretty well.
Huh?
Pretty good.
All right, grammar police, let's get to the point.
So what I'm considering 2 things here. One, the impact of families away on vacations. That's a huge deal. The athletes, to be quite frank with you, they practice all summer long. They are working out, they're here at the gym in the mornings, they're gonna be here no matter what. And my guess is it's the same for band. The other thing, pay attention, the other thing to consider is, I don't think it'll be that big of it, but we do have a lot of work going on at the academy. And it wouldn't take much rain to not have that done in time, especially the work being done up high and on the roof. It's just a consideration to give them as much time as possible. You can have a month rained out, you just don't know. So I think opening up that window as wide as you can would be prudent.
Dr. Martin and then Melissa.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We are one step ahead of you, Jack, in this case, checked with Chris Roy and the contractors, and there is no need to start after Labor Day for construction purposes. We also want to make sure that we get our kindergarten camp in at Atkinson, so we'll make sure that those rooms are available for kindergarten camp. So I respect your view on the weather and how that could be impactful, but our vendors are telling us, or our contractors are telling us, that is not a problem for them.
Melissa?
I'd like to know who they know.
Melissa.
I just want to say, as a parent of students in this district, my kids are ready in that mid, time of August to go back to school. And obviously, I know parents are ready, but honestly, my kids are ready. Like at that point, they're done all their summer camps and their summer activities, and you know, they're ready to get back into school. They're eager to get back into school. So me personally, and I know that I've heard this opinion from other parents, starting before Labor Day really is the better option in my eyes.
Okay, so it sounds like our teachers think they would like to do it before. It sounds like our students think they want to do it before. There's no problem with our construction. So do we want to make a motion for one of the calendars?
Are we just accepting it for first read? We have to go through it.
It does not have to be a motion to approve today. I believe it's on here for first read, but entirely within your purview if you choose to motion to adopt it this evening.
Whatever. Mark?
May it make sense to make a motion to adopt, and if you hear back from those other schools that they have, for some reason, changed their minds, then bring it back to the board for reconsideration.
Sure. May I point out, I realized I meant to call your attention to one final thing. The end of Q2 on the two calendars. And this is something that I think I meant to talk about with Mr. Broad. I believe we kind of alluded to it because it's something that we did in this year's calendar. You allowed us the flexibility to look at where the end of Q2 or semester 1 at the high school fell so that we could align it appropriately to have the least amount of disruption with the end of midterms and the beginning of the new semester. So depending on the option that you go with, currently on the calendar on the before Labor Day option, Q2 would end, or semester 1 would end on the 22nd. Which would be Thursday of the week prior to a professional development day. And that's also Martin Luther King Civil Rights Day. That's that week. Just a thought, it might be worth considering having an imbalance of 91 days in semester 1, 89 in semester 2 to have a nice end right on the 23rd and to start fresh after a 3-day weekend with semester 2. If you choose to adopt the after Labor Day start, the balance would be flipped. So currently we're projected to end Q2 on that version on Tuesday, the 27th, the day after the professional development day. So it's really that swing. So I think what I would ask is if you would be willing to allow us the flexibility depending on what you adopt to monitor disruptions based on weather, things like that, and to determine the end of the semester appropriately to have the least amount of disruption for students and staff.
That's only for the one after Labor Day, right?
It would be for both. It would be for both. So it would be an imbalance for both. I mean, Lou, do you concur? Yeah.
Yeah, that typically, and I think we did the same thing
We did
last
that this year, yeah.
Yeah, typically it's that 4-day week after
Yes.
Martin Luther King.
Yes.
Those 4 days are midterms and cut it clean, yes.
So rather than 90 days and 90 days, it would be 89, 91, and 91, 89, depending on the version you adopt.
Don?
Yeah, I think the only thing that can confound that would be weather things
Yes.
or things that happen that make you have to make an adjustment.
Yep.
Which is a little tricky, but you can do it.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, Sandy's still waiting on some things, so I'm good if we just want to do a first read and the one that we're kind of leaning towards, and if things change, we're not bound.
I'll make a motion to approve the first read of the before Labor Day calendar
For 2025.
for 2025-2026 school year.
We have a motion. Do I have a second? Second. Seconded by Alyssa. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Opposed and abstained? You're abstaining? All right, so 7-0-1. All right, thank you. Thank you for your input, Heather. All right, next up is we have some overnight travel requests. Who's presenting? Hello.
Good evening. So in your packet, you have 2 overnight travel requests. I think we'll do each of them separately.
Yep.
So the first one is Harvard Model Congress. This is a trip that has happened for years. Once again, it is planned to be happening in February. Kids are going to be missing school on Thursday and Friday. That's 28 students going down to participate in the Harvard Model Congress. So we're asking you permission to allow that trip.
Does anybody have any questions? Bree?
Do they just do makeup work for the missed days?
So
Or is
those
this counter curriculum?
it wouldn't count as curriculum in all of their areas. Usually when kids are missing school for whatever reason, whether they're leaving early for athletics or they're making arrangements with their teachers on specifically what they need to do. So I can't just say that like all these kids are carte blanche just doing the same thing. They're making arrangements with each individual teacher.
So I see that the students are paying $140 each, but then the rest is to be covered by budget. Which budget is that coming out of?
I believe it's coming out of student services. Or
Student
excuse me,
activities.
student
Student
activities.
activities.
Sorry, student activities.
Which is a line in it's the high school budget.
It's a high school
Okay.
budget.
School budget.
Any other questions? Does someone,
Make a motion to approve the Harvard Model Congress overnight travel request.
thank you. I've got a motion of a second, seconded by Paul. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Opposed and abstained, 800. All right, and the second trip,
So the second trip, similar vein, youth and government. It's a similar event where students are participating in a like a model of a legislative process. And so this trip is in April 10th. It's a smaller group of students, and then April 11th and 12th, it's the full set of students. That smaller group on the 10th is more of like the leadership training.
okay.
So it's just a smaller group of the leaders. But it's, once again, it is a travel. These kids are going to Concord, New Hampshire, and they're staying overnight. So those students on the 7th will be, I believe, on the 10th will be missing a little bit of class. But then the 11th and 12th, I believe, is a weekend, I think. But again, it's an overnight trip, so it has to get approved.
So leadership goes up on the 10th and then the rest of them follow up the next 2 days.
Correct.
Kim?
Is this a new trip?
Students have been doing this for years. I think Harvard Model Congress we've been sending kids to that for a longer period of time
That
than
one's in my head. This
the
one
youth
doesn't.
and government. I feel like this is a newer trip, but I know that we have done this one before.
It's been, I think it's been at least 8 or 9 years that they've been
After some
doing
time,
this. It's
yeah.
been quite some time.
Yeah, okay.
I'm thinking of some of the students who represented the school and they graduated quite some time ago, so.
Cool opportunities.
Any other questions? Bree?
Sorry, more of a comment. So it looks like the YMCA is contributing to this one.
It's
Yeah.
through the YMCA, so it's like they're sponsoring it.
Yeah.
So they are paying for aspects of it. Yep.
All right, no other discussion. Anyone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the overnight travel request for the Youth and Government Club to attend James O'Neill Leadership Training and Youth and Government Model Legislature Program in Concord, New Hampshire.
Have a motion of a second. Seconded by Dawn. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstained? 800. All right, thank you so
Thank you.
much. And then are you here for the curriculum as well?
I am here for the curriculum as well. So
And then I think you had a curriculum piece too.
Come on down.
Or she wanted you to do it all.
Yeah,
I saw it.
come on.
Mark, you don't wanna talk about pre-K writing?
Seriously, I thought you would
not my
jump at it.
specialty, but
So you have pre-K writing in front of you for a second read tonight.
And nothing's changed.
Nothing
since
has changed since last time.
Any questions?
No. I'll make a motion to approve the second read and adoption of the pre-K writing curriculum.
Motion by Kim, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Alyssa. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Opposed and abstained? 800. All right.
Thank you. See, I told you putting it.
You can stay here for moral support form.
Yeah,
My
you are.
favorite.
All right. So it looks like we got a first read for the 6th grade world language.
So the 6th grade world language, you have an executive summary in your packet. You also have the current curriculum document that supports the 6th grade.
Okay.
So what we're looking to do is really just a few minor pieces is remove any reference to German and Latin. At one time, in 6th grade, we exposed students to 4 languages. Spanish, French, German, and Latin. We're no longer offering German and Latin, so now it is just an exposure to Spanish and French. So the curriculum document still reflects German and Latin, so all we're looking to do is just remove that. And then we are looking to change the essential question a little bit. So you, in the executive summary, you have the wording of the current essential question, and we're looking to change it into just a slightly different version of that.
Listen.
Just a quick question, just because I'm sorry if this was spoken about when this happened. Why did we remove, I mean, I don't remember Latin ever being offered when I was there, but why was German removed? Just curious.
So it's been a number of years. It was sort of a, I mean, it was a, a phasing out of the program
Okay.
over time. It was just
Were we seeing less kids interested in it? Was that the
there was-
problem?
Did a thorough analysis of enrollment over about 5 to 7 years. And along with the impending retirement of the teacher who had taught it for quite some time, as he was preparing for retirement, and we were evaluating enrollment, and this goes back, I want to say, 8 or 9 years ago now that we phased it out, but it went through the Curriculum and Assessment Committee. We talked about it for multiple successive meetings. We were able to, at the same time, hire a part-time German teacher who stayed with us for a few years, knowing that she was coming and taking a temporary position. So we were able to offer all the way up through German 3 for those students to phase them out so that they could satisfy their language requirement.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just remember 20 years ago when I was here,
Yes.
German was very popular, so that's why I
Yes.
asked.
Yeah.
it just started getting smaller, and the same thing happened with Latin. The declining enrollment with Latin interest, and then the teacher who was teaching it left, and we didn't have a suitable replacement. So
We introduced Latin in 2015. We ran it all the way through 2019, and when that teacher left, we posted it and we were unable to fill the position. And so those students, I believe, we offered the option for VLAX, right, for those students
to try to get them
to
there
try to
for
finish them,
years.
but it was really unfortunate we were not able to fill the position. And so that position was actually eliminated back in 2021 when the elementary Spanish program was also, that was one of the positions that was cut from the budget.
Jack. And then Bree.
You ever
Did you have
consider
something?
Mandarin? Why did I think that was tossed around like 10 years ago?
I'm sure that, I mean, we've tossed around lots of different, whether it be Mandarin, whether it's American Sign Language. We've talked about different languages.
Just from a practicality
Yeah, from-
standpoint, with the
absolutely.
world, the way
Yeah.
the world is, that would be a more needed.
We did, and part of the research that we did back when we were looking into Latin as a classical language or Mandarin, Arabic, we looked at some school districts in Massachusetts and a couple in New Hampshire that had started to adopt and roll out Mandarin. And what we found is that over about 5 years at those districts, many of them were phasing it out due to an inability to staff it. And some of the dialects were so unique that it was very difficult from a staffing perspective to hire staff who were able to maintain the program. So it was something we considered, but with our enrollment and the offerings we currently had, we didn't think it was something that was prudent at the time. But
Thank you.
it's something we looked at around like 2014.
That's why I kind of remembered.
As we have reduced the total population of students in the district over last 15 years or so, I think it's inevitable that we're going to be unable to offer some attractive types of offerings that are more likely to be electives for students, or so it's sad, but when you can't staff it adequately and consistently, it's a red flag. You're probably going to lose it in that type of an environment. So that's where we're at.
Any other questions? Someone want to make a motion to accept the 6th grade world language curriculum for a first read, edits for a first read?
So moved.
Motion by Kim. Do I have a second? Seconded by Bree. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Opposed and abstained, 800. All right, then we got 7th grade social studies.
And so 7th grade social studies, what you have is the executive summary and the curriculum document. Really what this is I would describe it as sort of a mini unit in the 7th grade social studies. So it is a unit specifically on genocide and the Holocaust, but it is really tied with a project that the 7th grade ELA classes do. And so they're reading a text in 7th grade ELA. The 7th grade social studies teachers are performing a mini lesson, mini unit on the Holocaust to ensure that kids are getting that historical perspective and the sort of the social studies perspective of it as they're reading that text in their ELA class. It also does satisfy that language of there is that state law about teaching genocide and Holocaust in basically all 3 levels, but it's satisfying that state requirement as well. So it's a mini unit that was written by social studies teachers specifically to ensure that kids were getting the accurate historical and social studies perspective on the work that kids were doing also in their ELA classes.
Any questions? Jack, and then I'll
Could
let
you
Bree.
just touch base a little bit on, you always hear there's not enough history and enough social studies in our schools. So I see here what you're doing with the 7th grade. How does that progress through the next, through your senior year?
So K through 5 is, you start off really small. I mean, Lucy, you could probably talk more about this, or correct me if I'm wrong. You start off community, and then you grow from there until at what, grade 4 you're at the state level, or
But we're through North America through grade 5.
through grade, and then 6th grade kind of starts over again, if you will, with like more of a historical. You're looking at ancient cultures, and then 7th grade you're going from Greece, Roman times through like the age of exploration, and then 8th grade you're starting with sort of the founding of America through the Civil War, and then 9th grade you're going back into civics and econ. 10th grade you're doing world history. 11th grade you then pick up after Civil War Reconstruction through modern.
One of the challenges during the pandemic, far from was I a teacher, but I sat in the classes. And I think one of the struggles, especially with history, is you could take 2 years on World War II, right? And you gotta kind of touch base, and then you're on to the next thing, then you're on to the 6-day war. I mean, you're trying to fit all this into this small space, I guess.
Yeah, I mean the same argument could be made for any of the sciences. I mean, biology in the college level is a 2-year at least. We're trying to condense all of biology into one class. So I think really what has happened is we're looking at focusing on the skills and not so much the every little historical event or every little biological thing. And so you're really trying to make sure that kids are understanding that they are looking at history with a certain perspective rather than memorizing or rather than knowing what color was George Washington's white horse. So it's not about it's not about memorizing the details of all these factoids. It's about learning the skills to come at history or modern, just picking up a newspaper.
George
still
Washington,
do that.
Yeah, George Washington could be a year.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I mean,
I mean, there's probably people that have gotten a doctorate in one little aspect of anything. And so I think that's, you raise a good point that there is this huge breadth of knowledge that could be available. But I think what teachers really need to make sure is that they're giving kids enough of that knowledge to be knowledgeable, but also the skills to learn, maybe things on their own, but also have a way to investigate the world and have a mindset.
and I'm probably guilty of doing so. Oh my God, they didn't get this, or I was sitting in the class, geez, 1 week or 2 weeks on World War II. But then you realize the time frame of it, but you always hear people, well, they didn't learn this and they didn't learn that, and I think it's a good dialogue to have to kind of articulate what you just said.
The social studies K-12 documents are all based around 4 domains, history being one of them. A shift you're going to start seeing in the next few years, especially at the elementary level, is a push in research to build through knowledge curriculum. So what you're talking about is really immersing students in a topic knowledge.
and providing that information through read alouds and conversations and things like that, that I think we're gonna see a shift in that way in our instruction as that research really comes out.
Sorry for the question.
No worries, no,
That's-
it was a good question and I think it's, it's a good discussion to have and so people really understand what we are teaching in the schools.
Thank you.
Bree and then Dawn.
I know one of our goals was discussing mental health with the students as a school board, and then also I remember reading a policy perhaps, or I'm not quite sure what, but that parents could kind of opt out of an assignment if it was triggering or, and obviously I feel like genocide and the Holocaust could be triggering in that realm. So my question is there a standard set, something alternate?
So if a parent opts out, what
Yes.
else are they gonna get?
Yes.
So the way that I understand that opt-out procedure, if you will, is that, the parent, it's not just you opt out and you just sit around and do nothing.
Right.
It's really, what are the skills that lesson was supposed to be teaching? And then the teacher and the student, or the teacher, the student, and the parent kind of make a plan for what is that alternative assignment going to be.
So
I
I guess my concern is for such a triggering topic, should there be maybe a more standardized way of doing that?
I still think that there needs to be the parent discussion because,
absolutely.
I think, the teacher could come up with it could be a alternative assignment of genocide of just a different historical genocide piece. And is that what's triggering? Is it genocide in general that's triggering it? Is it just the Holocaust that's triggering it? So I think having that discussion with the family is the important part. I understand where you're coming from. But I guess I'm hesitant to say that there is this one alternative.
I guess maybe guidance for.
And I believe with any type of opt-out, that is part of that process. Is the parent, the teacher is coming together to decide what is that opt-out going to look like? What is the alternative assignment gonna look like? Because it might be different, even two kids opting out of the same sort of assignment for different reasons might have two different.
And then the goal would be to meet the competencies.
Yes, that would be the ultimate goal, is still to be meeting those competencies.
Thank you.
Dawn, you said you were good, or do you want something?
Well, I think you gotta add a lot of the content pieces and content, like you have standards, you've got competencies, there's, Jack's concern about, how much they're learning, it's all in a pretty well articulated curriculum. The curriculum documents you've created, if you just took a look at the content standards and all of the topics there, it's a broad, list of things that you would expect to see and have always seen. But I think what it is that becomes the potential of what could be taught in terms of facts and dates and whatnot. But whatever the teacher chooses will address the specific competencies. And as far as the work that's done by teachers to often have very predictable units, the alternatives in place, they're pretty familiar with the types of things that are parents' concerns about their students in terms of content. So they've done a pretty good job of being ready for those things. And generally, those are very readily accepted from the experience I've had with it.
I just wanted to, whenever we talk about curriculum stuff, I always want to add to the point that the teachers really work hard to try to find a way to fit things in. For example, this is a law that's from the New Hampshire House that we have to put in a unit of genocide somewhere in middle school, and it has to be social studies. And it has to be on a Tuesday at 4:00. I mean, so now it goes to our curriculum coordinators. Well, how are we going to do this? What does this look like? where do we have somewhere where we're already talking about something like that? And so now, okay, 7th grade, we do this book, okay, so does it fit there? And does it fit there? And how does it fit there? And how are we going to respectfully add to the conversation they're having in the language arts class? And it is very intricate the way that the teachers and the curriculum coordinators can find places to put things like this in that come from the law that is passed that says, oh, by the way, do this. And everyone's like, there's nothing that has anything to do with genocide in that particular spot in social studies. But the social studies teachers are like, hey, pause 1 second. This is important. We need to talk about it. We need to connect with our LA teachers, which they do such a great job, especially at the middle school. My experience has been, they all connect with each other so well. But it takes a lot of work and a lot of coordination. So I just wanted to make that point that when you see these curriculum units come through, there's so much work put into them before they ever even come here. So I just wanted to call that out so that it was recognized.
Well said. All right.
Thanks for recognizing that professionalism
Thank
of the staff that's making those decisions.
It's a big deal.
You know, just pull it out of a hat and say here.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Does someone want to make a motion to approve the first read of the 7th grade social studies curriculum edits?
So moved.
Motion by Kim. Do I have a second? Second by Bree. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? And abstained? 800. Thank you, guys. Next is the warrants.
We've got the warrants as they currently stand in front of you. I want to draw your attention to a couple specific pieces in each article or some of those articles, and then certainly want to be available to answer any questions or have a discussion about the warrants. The first one to look at is Article 2. That is the warrant with the operating budget and default budget. As I alluded to earlier, I anticipate that proposed budget or the operating budget's number is going to change. And as a result of that, because these are contractual agreements with transportation and a vote from BudCom, I also suspect that the default budget is also going to change and be reduced by those numbers. So stay tuned for updated numbers on Article 2.
Pause real quick.
Yes.
On the default budget, when we made the motion to remove those positions,
Yes.
the default budget was also reduced, correct?
The default budget is also reduced by those eliminated positions, and I will break that down more in the admin report with some specific numbers there if I could.
All right, cool. That sounds great.
All right. Article 2. Article 3 has to do with the tax cap. The update I have there is I will be meeting with one of the primary petitioners tomorrow of the tax cap to continue to try to understand the intent and have an opportunity to talk about potential impact from the district's point of view. Article 4, I'm going to spend a little bit more time on this one. Again, the first thing to say is I will be meeting with the primary petitioner next week on this article. We also, to remind the board, we learned at one of the joint meeting that the intent of those petitioners was not to be retroactive for the lease. In other words, not to be impacting the fully executed phase 1 and phase 2 that we're already in operations with, but it was future oriented and it was looking to restrict the district from making any further engagements with Bank of America and entering into any more phases of the lease, like phase 3 that we've approved a project list tonight. We've since asked for some legal guidance around this, and I wanted to share 4 key takeaways that we've heard from the attorney. Information right now for us to consider. The first is this, and that's this question about can the district restrict itself moving forward with entering lease agreements without any penalty? That answer is yes. It's explicitly outlined in our master agreement. It's section 3.04D. It really says that the school board has the discretion as the leasee or lessee whether they're going to enter into any more phases of the lease. So is that allowable? Yes, it's allowable. It does not require or does not constitute a non-appropriation or a default. I want to be really clear about that. So if we are precluding ourselves from engaging in the lease moving forward, it does not trigger the non-appropriation clause and it does not put the district in default. Simply, we're not engaging in lease moving forward. If, however, we don't make payments on the previously executed leases, phase 1 and 2, that would trigger the non-appropriation clause and would put the district in default. The third thing to share here is the legal perspective right now that although this is what the warrant says, it's not the voters that get to make that decision of whether a school board can enter into a lease or not. That authority or jurisdiction, according to our legal counsel, vests with this board, the governing body. The power of the annual meeting is to be able to go to the voters and appropriate the annual payments for those leases. So again, I want to reiterate that. The district legal counsel is letting us know that the governing body, those in allowable to enter into lease agreements, that's the jurisdiction of the school board. The voters have the authority of whether they're going to appropriate payments that would be on an annual basis for those. So the fourth thing I'd want to share is that when I meet with this petitioner next week, specific to this article, one thing that they may want to consider is if the intent is to look forward, then they should be considering a revision to this article or this petition or a new petition that's solely focused on phase 3 and solely focused on the appropriation of the annual payment for phase 3, not whether the school board can engage in lease purchase agreements. That is pretty much, according to the attorney, settled law, and it's in the statute that that authority rests with the board. So let me stop there and see if there's any questions or anything I can highlight about that legal opinion.
Alyssa.
Can
Kim.
the person who submitted this petition completely resend this petition?
My understanding is still no.
So
Is that
do they have to reword it then? Is that what we need them to do?
my understanding right now is they either need to reword it or there would be another petition entered in that would be Article 11. And because of the order, the sequence it would go through, the last vote would go back and kind of be the thing that's final and have, I don't know, jurisdiction over anything that else happened in the past, even if it was an hour ago. Does that make sense?
So pretty much either they can, at deliberative, they can make a
Change it.
motion to amend the language,
Okay.
or they could do another petition and do another article that like pretty much would cancel out.
Okay,
This
so and
It-
the language of this one would stay the same?
And I-
So even if it was like voted on and like technically,
Just want to give a little
Pass.
wrinkle to what Katie just said.
Yeah, correct me when I'm wrong.
What I'm also understanding from the legal opinion, and this just got here today, so we're still trying to unpack everything, is that citizen's petition cannot be amended on the floor.
Okay.
Because it would change the appropriation piece that did not go through the budget committee or this board to get there. So there needs to be some pre-notification or that's why there's a public hearing about those things. But I need to verify that with Stephen Whitley so I can give this primary petition next week a real clear way forward to be able to express their intent in the warrant.
Kim.
So you're saying that the voters can dictate how much we pay?
Always.
Appropriating, yes.
Always.
But when the lease purchase agreement was passed, isn't there a contract with Bank of America to say how much we pay?
Yes, and what I'm understanding from Mr. Whitley is, and we go back and really look at the warrant, you didn't need the voters' approval to enter into a lease purchase agreement. You needed the voters' approval to raise and appropriate the annual lease payment.
Up to
Okay,
the 25 million.
that makes sense. And I'm sorry, one more.
No,
Can I
Kim and
just-
then
one
Marco.
more. If we don't use the money, if the voters say, or if it's amended or whatever, and we don't use phase 3 on, is there a penalty for what we don't use?
What I'm reading right now, there's no harm, no foul, there's no penalty.
Does it, okay,
Correct, because like, even though we have the 25 million is not all one lease. So like phase 1 was its own, phase 2 was its own,
Correct.
phase 3 is its own. So it's like each one is its own lease. So if we were just like, nah, we don't wanna do it, we've only got 2 leases. That's it. The rest is just, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
the penalty, if the negative consequences come in play when you generate or when you trigger the non-appropriation clause,
You don't.
which is not making a payment that you've committed to, phase 1 and 2, or it's moving into default, not making a payment that you've committed to. Not entering into any more leases,
no penalty.
no penalty.
Mark.
So in theory, your interpretation preliminarily, and you just got this today, is
Thank
this
you for
and
cautioning.
you just got this today. This board, a future board, could enter into a lease for ice cream vending machines in every first grade classroom.
Correct.
And the deliberative could say, yeah, but we're not going to pay for it. That would automatically enter us into default. So that they're essentially approving the disbursement of funds for a lease agreement of which they do not necessarily have a vote on. It's not their purview.
But at deliberative, they can't come in and say like one line item. They can only reduce it by a whole
By that amount. Thank you.
You're welcome. Jack.
So, a couple of things here. I think the way, I don't know whether it was your first point or your second point, was that we don't have to take out, I mean, there's a theory out there, you gotta take out all 25 million, or that 25 million would be hanging out there forever. I remember that being said at, when you came into Atkinson, right?
Yeah.
That was always my understanding of it, because you don't pay interest on what you don't borrow, right? So, and I would rather take out less than more, but once again, I would go back to, this is about getting the work done.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Secondly, that lease, even though now what I'm hearing is we didn't necessarily have to go down that road to approve the lease, but we approved the dollar amount
Correct.
in the prior, when this came before us 2 years ago. Where was it going with all this? So this was voted on by the legislative body and passed. And now I almost feel like by helping someone with a petition warrant article, you're undermining what the legislative body. I mean, I understand wanting to help people. On the other hand, it almost seems like we're taking a side, and it doesn't pass the feel good test with me. I understand you trying to help. On the other hand, this was voted on at some point in time, and the entire district agreed on it. And I don't know, something just doesn't seem right.
Are you suggesting that in an abundance of goodwill, that we are providing services that could potentially undermine what the voters in the legislative body passed before? That's how I'm interpreting it as well, Jack.
Bree.
Well, I would like to reference full-day kindergarten, which was a warrant article, which failed, so the voters already voted on it. But we're talking about bringing it up again. So again, I feel that if someone wants to bring it up and take it to the voters again, let's do it. Let's see what their vote is.
I have, as a matter of fact, I love the fact that people are engaged. I love the fact that people take an opinion and write a petition or an article. I just have a problem, particularly with the district, potentially helping something that had already been decided by the voters.
Are you
To
talking?
turn it around, and kindergarten is very different because it's just not apples to apples. It's
Pause.
apples and oranges.
Pause 1 second. Are you talking about the lease that was voted on 2 years ago, or are you talking about this current article that citizens wrote?
I'm basically making a correlation that this has already been decided by the voters. Now someone wants to come in with a petition warrant article. How many times does the district help a petitioner on a citizen's petition warrant article create that article? Like, do the Board of Selectmen participate in that? I don't think so.
Oh, I see.
Could I?
Yes, Justin.
Jack, I look at it differently. I do not see me meeting with the primary petitioners as an individual help to them. I look at it as a help to this district. What I've learned talking to the district's legal counsel is the worst possible outcome is that a warrant passes that nobody understands, and
I agree with that.
it casts the district into a very unknown legal situation. That is the worst case scenario for Timberlane.
So you're talking about the existing thing that's out there.
Talking about any warrant that we're gonna bring in front of the voters, which is why no matter the citizen petition or not, we always run them through legal counsel to see if they're legal and can get there. So we always have a hand in it. I'm looking to simply bring clarity to the warrants so that when the voters are in front of them, they understand them, and most importantly, we understand the ramifications of those votes. Right now, if this warrant stayed what it was, nobody knows what it means if it passes or if it fails, right? We, in terms of what's best for Timberlane, we have to understand what it means.
I totally agree with that.
And that was another reason that we had that joint meeting, that way we had our legal counsel, because that was the other thing too, is that these citizens petitions, even at that meeting, one of the petitioners for it was like, oh, no, that was not the intent. And they didn't even know. So while I kind of agree what you're saying, it's like, no, you want to write this, then you write it. But again, if this goes the way it does and no one understands it, this is not going to be good. And then everyone's worried about their tax bills. Well, now we're going to be thrown into legal bills because of this. So.
But that particular warrant stays there. That doesn't get, so either way, right? Didn't you say that earlier, that can't be rescinded?
But it will be superseded by a following one with any luck. That's more clearly written and the intent is expressed.
And I understand that too, but what happens if the first one passes?
And the second one doesn't.
Just saying. I don't know if we solve I understand the intent and I understand the initiative. I don't know if that solves the problem, but give it your best try.
So just for, Bree, before I let you, just for clarification, they can't modify the language at deliberative for this?
That's my understanding. I want to read this more and I'm gonna be able to talk to Mr. Whitley on the phone to ask some follow-up things. Right now, all I have is the one-way communication. I haven't been able to follow up with any specific questions.
All right, great.
Well, I just think again to Jack and Justin's point is just simply talking, communicating, educating. That is what we need to do so that everyone is aware. And that's what we're trying to do with this legal counsel.
And that's the prevention is definitely worth a pound of cure at this point, so. Okay, I think that's good on that one. Did you have more?
Okay, just Article 5 is on the retention fund. I'm also meeting with that primary petitioner next week as well. Then you'll also see the two CBAs, Article 6 and 8, are now have the dollar figure from what Fran and Kim and Mark presented to you earlier.
Okay.
And that closes my input for the warrants.
Agreed.
Again, will it have the impact
Yes.
on these drafts at some point?
Yes, before you are voting whether you are recommending them or not. Yes, Maria's currently right now working on computing those tax figures.
And again, that's just ballpark estimate. Those cannot be
projection.
held to.
Yes. But it will certainly give voters more information than they've had in the past in terms of the individual impact.
So because there is a warrant on here about the surplus and like what we can and can't, like not being able to retain it, should we have a warrant article on here to just say we can retain $500,000? Like that's it? Like that's all we can?
You talk about competing with Article 11.
No, it's Article 5, the fund balance,
Oh, yeah,
shall the
yeah,
Timberlane
yeah,
Regional District vote to rescind the March 14th adoption of Article 15 fund balance retention of 5%. So before that became in, the board has always retained a dollar amount of the unassigned funds. This past year was the only year we didn't, but years prior, we did like 200 or 500,000,
Right.
like it's been different ones.
Yeah.
Just kind of like just to put
You
back.
may be alluding to Article 11.
But that's only $250,000
Correct,
for
yes.
the building construction, capital improvement, and land purchase capital reserve fund.
Right.
That's different
That's
than
not what you're
just-
talking, okay.
No, because there was a warrant article, and Maria's not here, she was the one that was here, but there was a warrant article one year that spoke to just so much going into the. Am I losing my mind, or I'm wanting to think that was Sandy, do you?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. I'm not suggesting that we do it, I'm just saying that, Okay. Anybody have any other questions on the warrant articles as presented?
Are you saying like to
have a dollar amount, make a warrant article with the dollar amount so that that can pass for
Right.
future boards?
No, for that year. So like every year it would be, so like so it's the unassigned, the fund balance retention.
Yeah.
So like, at the end of the year, okay, we're just gonna keep $250,000. At the end of the year, because it goes into the, unexpected, anything happens, right?
Yeah.
So then it's like at the end of the year, we don't use it, it goes back to taxpayers. But if we needed it, it was there for unanticipated.
The emergency fund, right?
Pretty much, yeah, it would fund the emergency.
So conceptually,
Yeah.
you're looking to potentially investigate if there is warrant language there that would still allow the district to retain part of the unassigned fund balance.
Only for an X amount, so it's like, we
For an
don't make
X
a
amount of
decision, the
dollar.
warrant, the people already said, like, 250,000 is all you can, and I'm just throwing that number out
Yep.
there, but I'm wanting to think one year that we had a warrant.
I'm looking right now, I'm not finding it.
It's just food for thought, I'm not wanting people to,
Could Article 11 cover that, crud, the roof fell in fund? Because I'm thinking your intent is just to have an emergency, should something happen
it's
completely
unanticipated.
unexpected. So I'm thinking it would be a capital rather than a personnel. So I would think that
Yeah.
the expense would be with the building
Okay, yeah.
infrastructure. So I'm wondering if 11 doesn't already cover that.
And it might, that's why I'm asking the question.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I will go get that answer.
That was it, cause like I said, don't want to like supersede voters or anything, but if it was like, hey, can we keep X amount, and that's all we can keep, that's all we're authorized, and then they vote yes, then it would be again, and then it would go back if we didn't. So like I said, if Article 11 covers that in the 250,000, great, but that's all.
Sounds good.
Any other questions for warrant articles? All right. Administrator's report.
We're gonna try to keep it brief for everybody tonight. The first order of business was just to review the BudCom meeting from the 26th. I think we've done that previously. But again, the district administration prepared $2.4 million in potential areas of reduction. We brought those to BudCom, we presented those. They really fell into three areas. It was either kind of a change of projection in some of our anticipated expenses moving forward. Two, it was more tying closely to actuals. Principals and directors generated over 50 lines in their schools and departments to make reductions from. The third big component of that was capital and staff. In the end, the budget committee voted 5-4 to not make any reductions, which is why the budget that sits in front of you is the currently proposed budget. But again, I'm looking for those two adjustments on January 9th, and we'll come back to you with those reflected numbers. With regard to the budget, we've also been working through the default budget. So we've presented that to you previously. Three things I wanted to share tonight about the default and potentially open up any discussion the board wishes to have. One, as I've said it already, we'll make those two adjustments to the default, one for the transportation piece and also for the school board stipends. The second, and much more complex, is wanted to have a little conversation or presentation about one-time expenditures and how we generate those pieces and how we identify those to include those in the default budget. What I can share with you is that reaching out to South Central, districts of our size in this region generate anywhere historically from 1 to about 10 one-time expenditures in their default budget. I'll tell you that the majority of school districts are on the lower end of that. So single-digit one-time expenses is typically what they're putting forward. This year, Timberlane has been exhaustive in its one-time expenses, and we're putting forward 10 as we try to comb through the budget and find these one-time expenditures. How do we find one-time expenditures? This is the general philosophy that we're using, and I'll use the capital line as an easy example. If one year you're going to put a roof on a school, and it's going to come from the capital line, you're probably not going to put that roof on again next year if you're doing the work that you should be. However, the district's initiative and goals and planning around capital improvements is embedded in that capital line. So the capital line itself moves into the default budget. Just because you purchase something that is potentially a one-time expense in that line does not take away from the fact that the district has an obligation and a mission to fully fund that line to fill its capital projects moving forward.
Question.
Can I give one more example, Jack? And I'll use a much lesser dollar figure example. Each school has a replacement equipment line. Let's say that's funded at $100 for easy number's sake. And if I'm a principal of a building 1 year, I know that I'm gonna buy 4 or 5 new student desks, because that's what I need. I'm probably not gonna buy 5 or 6 of those same student desks the next year, but I am gonna have to replace equipment in my school the next year. So the replacement equipment line moves to the default budget, and we're not picking out those individual desks that are part of the district's mission to be fiscally responsible and replace equipment over time sporadically, so they're not coming in huge chunks to the taxpayers. So that's how we are approaching identifying one-time expenses. That's how most districts do it. And want to report to the board that we are on the extreme high end this year of identifying those expenses. Again, most districts would be in single digits. Jack.
So this is kind of, it's always been for the 20 years, 25 years I've been around. What's a one-time expense? What's general maintenance? It's been around, Robin, argument, discussion, and usually people will fall on both sides of it depending on what argument they want to make on any given day. But to your point, and I understand the point you're making, is that prescribed by law that capital line goes in? It's been suggesting that you just develop a line and call it this or call it that. If those funds were raised by the legislative body in a budget, say for the capital line, are we required by law when mandating the default, when putting together the default by that formula, that those funds stay in there? We just can't start breaking things out because we would like to.
I think that's a fair statement, Jack. If you remember the equation for the default, it starts with the previously voted budget. And the previously voted budget had whatever the capital line was, or had whatever the school replacement equipment line was.
Just want to be clear that that's required by law, that we follow that prescribed formula, and that we just can't break things out of a line because we feel like because we think it's
A one-time expense.
a one-time expense.
That's our starting point.
Thank you.
The third piece I wanted to point out about the default budget is about eliminated positions. I know that I've had some board inquiries over the last week about those pieces. And a couple things I want to draw your attention to. If you remember how the default budget was presented, there is a line for professional positions, and it may say TTA, and it will say this is the increase or the decrease. So everybody in that grouping is moving up a step, or they're having a COLA. There's some salary increase to those positions, but there's also a salary reduction from the positions that we've eliminated from that line. So for the TTA, what you'll see in the default budget is that there's an increase of about $1 million. If we did not, or if you did not eliminate those positions, that number would be about $1.32 million, because it would include the salary and FICA and the New Hampshire retirement for those positions. But they're not there because we've removed them from the district. Same thing with paraprofessionals. If you look at the default budget, there's a note there that line came in negative $75,000. It's that denomination because this board decided to eliminate positions in a total of about $407,000. So if those positions were still in the default budget, that TSS line would not be negative 75. It'd be on the positive side of about $325,000 additional cost. So I want to be really clear with this group and the public that those positions that were eliminated, the salary, the FICA, and the New Hampshire retirement, are not included in the default budget as prescribed by the notes that are attached to those sections. Did I answer any questions or any thoughts there?
Kim.
When I'm looking at, I'm not looking at the default budget, I'm looking at the proposed budget right now.
Okay.
When you're looking at that line item, salaries, teachers, and you see the numbers are going all the way across, is there a way to dig into that people can see what you're saying?
So
Because you're telling me that line,
if I'm looking at the proposed budget,
okay, so that first line, salaries, teachers.
teacher salaries.
Is there a way, like for example, if you click it and then it drops down and it'll show you taken out, positions removed, positions added, I know how complicated that one line is right there.
Yep.
is there a way, other than you saying this is how we did it, for the world to see how it's done?
themselves.
Yes, we could. I think what we try to balance is clearly communicating on a document one page of information, or nesting everything under there, and then the bottom line gets lost to this board, to the public.
Right.
Of course we can, but what I'm here to tell you is that number is, you see the $1 million there? What I can say to you, and be happy to meet and talk with any community member that wants to see how we got there, like the background calculation and data, but that number, if you didn't do what you did, would be higher. It'd be $320,380 higher.
Right.
And for the assistants, it'd be $407,142 higher. For a grand total of $722,522 higher.
I know this.
I know.
But I know that that is something that's been like, okay, so here's this line, and you're telling me this or whatever. That's been a question to me. So that was my question to you is, so if people need to dig into those, just ask.
Yes.
Just ask. We are a phone call away.
Thank you.
Jack.
Yeah, let's admit that this, to someone that doesn't eat, sleep, or drink this, is, I don't wanna say convoluted, but complicated.
Very complicated.
Let's just admit that.
That one line
So
alone.
I understand people's apprehension, especially with some of the politicking going on right now, to say the very least. I think you've been very deliberate, very forthcoming. Anything, and we just heard you say, Mr. Superintendent, you'll speak to anyone to clarify this for them.
Correct.
Fair enough. So in the end, we've saved about $720,000 off the top of my head.
$727,522.
Thank
It's
you.
the same number that the board approved when
In
you eliminated the
savings,
position.
in savings by eliminating positions.
Correct.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. The other topic I wanted to touch on tonight is the unassigned fund balance and its relationship to the fiscal year 26 budget that we're going through, and really the non-relationship that kind of exists there. Continue to hammer home a couple of points. One is that the unassigned fund balance is not a cash account. So on July 1, the district is not going to be flush with $16.4 million of cash that it can access for whatever purposes. That's not how the unassigned fund balance works. It's not like your personal checking account that if you got a $500 bonus from work and your heating bill came in $300 less, there's not $800 of cash sitting there. That's how your checking account works. That's not how the unassigned fund balance works. The better way, the more accurate way to think about that is that the unassigned fund balance is the equity between your revenue and your expenses. So it's things the district can draw on in times of unforeseen circumstances, emergencies, negative economic trends. It's a way to stabilize the tax rate. But as you and as the community think about the fiscal year budget that's going to be coming up that voters will give their opinion on March 11th, I do not want anyone having the mistaken idea or knowledge that somehow there's cash sitting in a district account just waiting to be used to offset whatever that budget's going to look like. It's not cash, it's equity. And I don't know how many more times I need to say it like that, but it is like Jack, you said it before, it's a difficult thing to wrap and grasp your head around. I would encourage members of this board and the community, just like we said before, if they have questions to that end, if you have questions to that end, please schedule some time with Maria and I. We'd be happy to sit with you and to walk you through why it's not a cash account. It's a difference of equity between your revenue and expenses. Thoughts, questions, pieces?
Would a fair analogy be, my mortgage is $2,000 a month, I owe $300,000 on it, I have $200,000 worth of equity. As I'm paying off my mortgage, as my debts continue to come in and there's obviously revenue, the equity in my home the following year in my properties could be higher, but I can't necessarily, it's not earning interest.
Couldn't
it's
pay
not
a
in a
bill with it.
Couldn't pay a bill with it, it's not earning interest, but it is indeed equity.
Yes.
So surplus may be a misnomer because it's not surplus money that I can go on a trip to Tahiti, but it's rather equity in my home that in an emergency, I could draw upon home equity line of credit, what have you, in order to do something that was a drastic need.
I think that's a fair analogy.
Made up for my earlier one, okay.
Yes, Jack.
So it's kind of been portrayed or construed that way. What is who determines that number?
The unassigned fund balance?
Yes. How does that number, it's not,
It's a calculation. It's right.
all right, and this isn't, I'll pass.
Anything else?
Not on the unassigned fund balance unless there's things here.
All right.
Okay.
Okay.
Lastly, it's just clerical. I wanted to remind everyone of the calendar. We've got the public hearing on January 16th. We have the deliberative session on February 6th. We then have 4 community public hearings on the tax cap citizens petition. February 11th is at Danville School. These are all at 7 p.m. February 11th, Danville. February 13th, Atkinson Academy. February 18th, Sandown North. February 20th, we'll be here and we will be meeting for the town of Plastow.
It's in the pack, isn't it?
I think it is in the pack.
Are we expected to be at our respective towns or all of them?
So
Can we have a quorum?
We have to have a quorum.
We have to.
So
Okay, so we are expected.
we'll just, yes, so I would just
Can you
please come
repeat which
to your
town
towns.
the meeting is?
Danville
It's the
Bree is
11th.
on February 11th.
Yes, but I was just told I have to be at all of them, so.
No, I did not. I said we have to have
You
a
have to have a
quorum.
quorum.
So we'll work it out, but that way some people don't have to be at everyone. But like if, at least be at your town ones. So Danville reps, please come to Danville.
What about, what's the 13th? Can you just repeat the list
Atkinson
again?
Academy.
To keep it simple, the week of the 11th, there's a meeting on Tuesday, Thursday. In the week of the 18th, there's a meeting on Tuesday, Thursday.
So, yeah, I got it. I wrote it down. I got
We'll
it.
figure it out.
And then, okay.
And then the vote, of course, is on March 11th.
Question, the January 16th, isn't that our next school board meeting?
It is.
So we'll have the hearing and then we'll have the meeting afterwards?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
typically what you guys would
Okay.
do, and it's not necessarily a business meeting. We could make it one if you need to be. We can check on our admin side to see if there's any pressing issues, but that is also the evening that you would meet after
To like ratify.
to vote on the recommendations for each warrant.
Is that meeting here or is that happening at
The public hearing is at the PAC.
It's always
At the pack, yeah.
And lastly, what I'd say, Jack, I really appreciate you raising the recognition for Tom Black. We also just wanted to recognize him from the district administration point of view. Started working here in 2004, was moving on his 25th year as a paraeducator, all at the high school. So he certainly left an impact over there. We've connected with his wife and his family. Just wanted to give him that recognition of serving Timberlane over the last 2 decades. And Mr. Baccarezza at the high school is certainly going to be rolling out a celebration of life dates and activities for any of the staff that care to attend from his home there at the high school. So thanks so much for your service, Tom.
Big heart.
Anything from Sandy or Dr. Martin? Anything?
Good.
Okay, cool. Anything with the vacancy report other than it's,
Hasn't changed much since the 19th.
okay.
But we're still looking really good in terms of where the number of vacancies are as opposed to where they were.
Committee reports, I'll start with Jack.
Nothing.
Dawn.
Nothing.
Me, I'll be meeting next week on the 9th with the budget committee. Mark?
I'm good.
Kim?
I'm good.
Bree?
Strategic plan will meet the 16th is our next meeting.
Alyssa? Nope. Paul?
I'm good.
Oh, nice. Do we have any other delegates or individuals to speak? Any other business at this time? Jack?
I get 2 things, both of them kind of focused around education. One of the things that I pulled out of our last meeting, and I'm not a special education person. I mean, there are people in here that know it a lot better than, well, absolutely better than I do. But what I took was that we review these students every 3 years, like they get identified with having a certain need. Then every 3 years, we review that. Is there a way, and I'm sure there's a reason why we're not doing it, but I'd like to hear it every year, because isn't the idea here is to give them what they need in that first year and get them back, for lack of a better term, mainstreamed? Wouldn't that be a way of reducing the cost and all? I know you guys are laughing and smiling, but
No.
for me, from a production
No,
management
it's a good
standpoint,
question.
it's, there are children, I'm sure, that are gonna need our help all the way through and beyond. I'm not naive about that. But I also think there'd be a percentage that maybe the first year or maybe the second year, we can,
Phase out.
I don't wanna use, phase out is a better word than what I was thinking, so.
It's a great question, cause it's information seeking, Jack. We were just chuckling about who was gonna respond.
Right.
I'll let Dr. Martin and I may chime in on anything that I.
So, thank you. As we talked about
You guys
last.
are licking your chops, all three of you are smiling. Go ahead.
No, but I mean, it's a reasonable question,
Yeah.
right? And so, and if you're not immersed in the process, you don't necessarily understand the process. So first of all, the lion's share of our students with identifications are mainstreamed. They're not in self-contained programs. As a matter of fact, I don't believe Lucy could help me here, but I don't believe we have any self-contained programs in any of our schools. Our kids are mainstreamed to the best of our ability. They may have specialized programs that they move in and out of, but they're not warehoused in a location. That's a very inappropriate way to
No,
live with a disability. As a parent, and I'll use that lens, I can at any point in time request a meeting of my child's IEP team to sit down and talk about my child's progress. We're also visiting every year with families, whether parent asks for it or not, on reviewing an IEP goals and the child's progress. That every 3-year piece is a formal evaluation that they must go through in order for us to be in compliance with the federal IDEA law.
So I misunderstood the process.
I don't think we didn't really unpack it very, very clearly. And it's just, but it's much like, again, I could see that my child's not making the progress medically that they need to, that I feel like they want them to make. So I'm calling the doctor to have a checkup and have a check-in about, let's see where they're at right now.
That's what I was hoping to hear and understand. So in other words, I just don't want kids caught up in a program when they're ready to move on. And the way I understood it, the way it was explained last week, every 3 years we do this review. So it's more in keeping with what I would think would be productive. So thank you for that.
Individual education plan. So it's all individualized, right? I may make more progress than my peers or less.
Now, the other issue that I
Jack,
have, thank
hold
you
on.
very much for that.
I think
Can I
Mark,
just have a point of clarification? So I want to make certain I'm hearing this clearly. So the state mandates every 3 years, so we do the formal every 3 years, yet you folks meet with the parents every year.
It's part of the IDEA also, Justin, isn't it, that yearly review?
Annual
Yes.
review.
Annual review.
So in my mind, if there is a child there's been identified, I'll use something simple, they have mild dyslexia. If after the first year, second year, they've been given the tools to address that appropriately, is that child then at that conversation, will you have that conversation with the parents and say, hey, these are the steps we've taken. It looks as if, Jack or Jill has progressed and is now
meeting goals and
has
expectations.
meeting goals, expectations. They no longer need it. Does that conversation happen on the regular?
Can that conversation
That can
happen?
happen.
Yes. Is a child locked into an individual education plan until these 3-year formal evaluations? No. You can add a service for a child on any given day. You can retract a service on any given day. You can enter a child into a program on any given day and retract a child from that program on any given day. Whatever is presented and whatever the body of evidence is of that time, that IEP team can use to make any decisions. They're not locked into any waiting game.
So are we regularly going and revisiting this on
Yes.
the annual basis with the parents?
Yes.
And if the determination is made the child now has the skill set, they no longer need these services. And I'm asking, and unfortunately, I'm taking completely my education hat off and looking at the financial cost associated with supplying the services that our students need, wanting to make certain that the lights just don't stay up.
It would be, it's our obligation to be recommending what you're talking about, which is a discharge from special education, if we have the body of evidence
Okay.
to say that that should
And
happen.
that's being done in the regular, we have the staff and the support.
We'd be obligated to, right? Like,
It's a law.
We're obligated to a lot of things that unfortunately we can't do to the best of,
The state
we should.
tracks us though.
but least restrictive environment, Mark, we could not keep a child identified if they didn't meet the criteria established for that identification.
And we're looking at that on a yearly basis rather than try
Yes.
it. Okay,
Yes,
perfect.
a yearly
Awesome.
basis for every child. And at I would say even for most kids,
Hell of a lot more.
kind of crunch that timeline and maybe it's quarterly or maybe it's biannual.
Perfect, thank you.
So that was extremely helpful because since I heard the 3-year thing, it kind of weighed heavily on my mind.
That's just about eligibility.
Okay, the other thing I want to talk about, and I know this is an issue, but with everybody in the district, the proficiency rates. We heard about history today. When I look at science, or for that matter, any of the proficiency rates, I shudder, and I wonder how in the sciences and the histories, social studies, whatever we get tested, how we're in that spot. And I agree with you to a certain extent. You're understanding that not all kids are going on to be doctors and attorneys and engineers, and every kid has a spot in life. Right?
Personalized pathway.
Thank you. Well, you eat, sleep, and drink it better than I do. But I'm wondering, it's 12 months before we even know, maybe 18 months before we understand how we're doing from that one measure that we have. And I feel like it's a lot of dead space from when we start anew. And I would love to have some type of measure, whether it be a quarterly, in a perfect world, it's quarterly. When the report cards come out, I understand it's more just like the budget. It's an extremely complex process. I get it. But getting something at the end of the year or 16 months later, the ship has sailed, in my opinion. And I want to know if we're doing things right or wrong. And I'd like to continue to have almost every meeting, or at least once a month, a discussion about English, math, science, history. I would love to have an in-depth thing on how we can move those proficiency rates, because that's what the public sees. They don't see all the other things that are going on for sure. That's how we're measured. I'm of the opinion we put those out on big thermometers out in front of the schools and say, you know what? We need your help. Go to a library and mentor a kid in English. Go to a library and mentor a kid in math. So this way here, we address it as a community, not us pointing fingers across the table from each other. So I'd like to continue this discussion, but I think it's just something that the board, in the middle of all the other stuff that we have to do, continues to strive to improve those numbers dramatically. I felt another thing that's kind of heavy on my mind, so thank you.
Any other business? All right, we will be moving into a non-public. Mark?
Going to make a motion to go into non-public under 91-A:3 subparagraph C.
Got a motion to have a second? Second by Kim. Can I get a roll call vote, please?
Yeah, Cynthia?
Yes.
Donna Woodward? Katie Peterson?
Yes.
Mark Sherwood? Kim McCormick? Yes. Bree Woodward?
Yes.
Kowalski and.
Yes.
Did I just say your last, did I say your?
All right, so we will be going into non-public. Will we not be coming back out
I know,
other than
when I
just to
said
say
it,
the
but
minutes?
you
Everybody
said
have a
it
good
earlier,
evening. Why? Dude,